something doesn't feel right anymore, you know, uh, what you're doing in your life, like you've created the story for yourself, you created this narrative, you created this life. If that doesn't feel right anymore, then letting go of that is just following that that's okay. Maybe you don't need to know exactly what's going to come next.
I'd like to welcome Tyler Deal to the show. Tyler, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I look forward to this chat.
Yes, yes, me too. And I know that currently you're up to a lot of healing work and some really good things to help people return to their natural state. But before we dive into what you're up to, I'd like it if you could share a little bit about your journey and how you became a healer.
Sure. Yeah. So it's always interesting to go back to my past because they're just memories floating, right? And so sometimes I have a real strong sense of what those memories are, and other times they disappear. And I feel just before I go into it, I just feel like more and more so they're they're disappearing. Not that they're not valid or important, but it's just not it seems like a different lifetime, if that makes sense. It just seems like a completely different person, even though I'm the same person all the way through, right? So yeah, I mean, it was a mix of a childhood. I think I grew up in for the first 4 years of my life in the Bay Area, um, um, Los Altos and Mountain View, that area. And I lived on an orchard, a fruit orchard of about an acre and a half. And I just remember that life was just so colorful and beautiful, as a kid, like, it is for kids, most kids. And so I was very happy there for the first 4 years of my life. And, my mom was wild and eccentric at the time. And, I remember her driving us all over. We'd get fast food and we would be sitting can't remember the name of the street. I think it was El Camino, right in the strip, the center strip where the grass is. And so there was traffic flowing in either direction. We'd be sitting
Wow.
there eating, my sister, my mom, and myself would be sitting there eating food and whatever. So, and then, I loved being in nature, and I had a connection to the elements. All the elements felt very alive to me. The sun and the wind and the trees. I loved the trees, and I remember not being able to reach all the fruit, but shaking the trees to try to get the fruit to drop. And then when I was four, my father, he decided to move his company up to the Seattle area. And so then as a kid, I didn't know what was going on. I just saw the moving truck arrive and all the boxes being stuffed in there and the furniture. And I was just like, what's going on here? And my sister knew what was going on because she's 3 years older than me. And so we moved there, and then it just became like a dark cloud came over no pun intended, because Seattle's a very cloudy place. And so it just became difficult. There was stuff going on in the household that was pretty hard. My dad was stressed, my mom was stressed. They were building a house. There was all the stress of building a house. um, and then I just started, even at the age of 5, I started to get really depressed. And I was that way for quite a long time through my teens. I had problems with substance abuse in my teens as well. Um, I had some good memories. My parents had split up in 1988, and so I went and lived with my mom, and that was the first time that I had felt very free for a long time, because prior to that, I didn't feel free expressing myself. My dad was very angry person at that time, very critical of me. There was abuse, all these kinds of things. So when I actually left and went with my mom, I was like free. I was a latchkey kid. My mom would go off to work. She was a therapist, mental health counselor. And so I went to public school for the very first time. It was middle school, and I was like, "Wow, what's this place?" I was started to skateboard and go skiing in the mountains, and so I had some freedom, but I was still depressed. I had friends, but we were always smoking dope and smoking cigarettes and drinking and taking acid and going to to the bands in Seattle that were really thriving at that time. And so I was killing a lot of brain cells. And not to be laughing, but that's the time when your brain should be developing, right? Um, so there's regrets with that. And there was a lot of self-consciousness. I didn't know who I was. As a teen, you're trying to discover who you are. And when you're in your 20s, you don't know who you are. The whole world tells you, the world, the outside world, how you should be. And it was always hard for me to conform to that. So it was hard for me to fit into a mold, like going to school, getting a job, having a family, retiring. I felt like an alien on a different planet. I went to college, and that first year I started to get really, really depressed. Um, Not suicidal in the sense of I didn't want to be here, but not that I wanted to hurt myself. And so my only way to kind of cope with that, I didn't know how else to. I didn't think talking to people would do any good, was just to be in nature, to go to the ocean. I love the ocean. To go into the forest. I love the forest. And that was how I coped with that depression. It got worse and worse and worse, meaning it got more intense. It was a whole body feeling, and it was also worse, meaning it wasn't going away. I didn't know how to cope with it. So that's when I started to, well, I'll just backtrack a little bit, Chrissy, that when I was 18, I had met my first spiritual teacher, and I had a initiation at the time. And it really began to open my centers inside of me and just kind of really opened me up to a whole different world. And my mom, she's the one that took me to this person to meet this person. And because I saw my mom, she came home. This was during my senior year in high school. She came home one evening, and she had this big grin on her face, I remember. And for 2 weeks, she said that she had no thought, no judgment. She was in a state of complete love. And I was like, oh, wow, let me meet this person. And she's like, well,
Yeah.
she's coming back. She lived in Arizona. And she's like, oh, she's coming back in 2 weeks. So I went and did that and had this beautiful awakening. Yet my body was still like chemically dependent, So I was kind of mixing the worlds of spirituality and substance abuse. And I really haven't talked about much in past interviews with my substance abuse, but I think it's an important part of my journey because it has really shaped the way that I, see things, and just being able to shed that and let that go over the years has been really important. So, yeah, so I was at the point in college I was like, okay, I just don't want to be here. God, divine, universe, whatever you're called, just please take me. And that's when I had an NDE. I had a near-death experience. And my journey after that was basically learning how to kind of find myself, um, heal trauma, I guess you could say. It was more, I don't really like to use the word trauma so much. I think it's overused. I think it's more so just like healing memories, the thoughts and the feelings coming up, and just accepting those. And then also my body that had gone through quite a hit when I was I was a mountain bike accident, and I hit the ground pretty hard. And so yeah, it was first like, let's heal the body, and then, but it wasn't just that, it was everything else that came with that. My body was being activated with memories and um emotions, I guess you could say. So that has been the journey into being the journey into being able to express myself more clearly, which has always been a little bit hard. And so that's when I got into acting, and then I also got into doing body work and learning body work, which was really beautiful. And I did that for many, many years. Had my own practice, and then I worked at places as well. And yeah, and then it kind of evolved from there into doing remote work, meaning that, I can sit with you here and talk, and we can talk about what's going on, and then see if we can make some shifts and changes of things. Not that anything is wrong with you. It's more just, so how can I make you feel better, and be here for you. That's basically what I've been doing for a while now, off and on for maybe about 10 years, and then the last 2.5, 3 years more so. And now just now it's I've been passing it along. I've taught a couple classes, or I'm actually teaching my second class starting this Saturday to teach people what I do. And so now I'm kind of passing along the gift or the baton to others. And then as I make a transition and see what else is going to be happening for me. So I know that's a lot in a short amount of time,
Yeah,
but
no, thank you. Thank you so much. I feel like the picture that you painted helped me understand a lot about who you are. And what I loved about how you expressed different parts of your journey, I felt like you were telling my story. Besides the NDE, besides the bike accident, there were so many parallels with a couple of things that, I feel like are important, because it's my understanding that there might be a lot of people out there that feel the same way. For example, when you said that you weren't suicidal, but you felt like you didn't want to be here. So many times I have felt that way. Not that I could do anything, actually do anything to take my life, but that being here in this reality was just so hard, and I didn't want to do it anymore. But I felt like I couldn't share that with anyone because I would freak them out. And so you mentioned substance abuse as well, and I am a recovered alcoholic addict from several addictions. But one of the things that I have learned and taken with me so clearly is that we teach by our experience, strength, and hope. So I appreciate the depth in which you described all of that. I would love to dive into some of this work that you do. So it's my understanding that the body carries a lot of our memories. Would you talk about that a little bit?
sure. And so this is just my perspective, and I don't know, it might change tomorrow. It feels like things can change all the time, more and more so these days.
Yeah. I love
I
that you say that. I'm just going to say this really quick.
Yeah,
Just throughout
please.
my journey, I have expanded my awareness. And so what helped me 10 years ago doesn't actually resonate anymore. And so
Yeah.
I love that you said that it could change tomorrow.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that, and thanks for sharing your experience as well with, what you've gone through. I think that's important for listeners to hear.
Mhm.
So yeah, so even so, I was talking with somebody about this the other day, a client of mine, and she said that, after I worked with you, she's like, none of the meditations I do seem right anymore. And I'm not saying that I'm like, okay, so I don't know if that came from me, but let me just kind of explain that what feels right right now might change very quickly. And that's just kind of the time that we're in right now, so if you might be listening to somebody on YouTube, for example, and then all of a sudden the next day you listen to them, you're like, ugh, not to be like judging the person, but you just feel in your body like, why am I listening to this person? I think it's very important that people listen to that. And what that is doing is, and not just listening to people on the YouTube, it could be having a practice, it could be going to a job, it could be, having a partner, a relationship with somebody. And what that really is doing, that energy is just bringing us back into our own power, our own sense of getting the answers from within ourselves, and just really listening to what I call the spirit. It's us. It's not different than us. It's just listening. That's what I call the intuition, is it's our spirit wanting to communicate through us. So that's why that's happening for people. And this, I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm kind of going off on tangents. I hope that's okay.
No, totally fine.
Yeah. And so that's also with this whole thing we're hearing about empaths. It's like this very popular culture now is empaths, right? The way I see it is that sensitivity is just our ability to feel what's going on within ourselves is becoming stronger, and it really has nothing to do with the other person or picking up on vibes or feeling anger from somebody. It's just our own sensitivity is kind of washing through us. Our own ability to feel with greater depth is happening within us. So that's like, if you were to take the word empath out, or highly sensitive person, or any of that, and just kind of all of these terms that we're being fed, and just kind of throw that out, it's what I see. It's just my perspective, Chrissy. It's what I see is being left out. It's just this amazing amount of depth welling up within us, of the sense of the sense of being able to just be alive again. And that's okay. That's beautiful. And it might not feel great all the time. It might feel wonderful sometimes. So I totally completely forgot what your question was. I'm sorry. I'll
That's
go back
okay.
to it.
We can totally shift gears, because I
Okay.
I want to comment on that. The empath and the highly sensitive, and these trends or these terms that we use. And what I feel resonates with me is that we actually all can attune to each other, and we all can actually have that gift. So it's not that I'm different or special because I'm an empath. It's just that I where I'm at, I can attune this far or this far. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. I think we all have that sensitivity. So
Mhm.
that's why you see it more and more, because more people, I spoke to somebody a while back, and she's like, I was never sensitive. And then I remember I was walking down the street in Las Vegas, and she's like, I couldn't stand it. I had to go back to my room. I'm like, okay. So it's happening to people, just that. So yeah, I agree with that part of it, that we absolutely, it's like we are everything. So that sensitivity of other people is just showing us that we are that aspect, and we're picking up and sensing that particular aspect that's within ourselves of that other person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. So the question that I had originally asked, or the direction that I was getting curious about,
Yeah.
is so I understand that you do different kinds of healing. So you work with quantum healing, body work, and energy healing. And I would love it if you could just kind of dissect all of those and give us an idea of, for some listeners that might be new to this kind of healing, what does that mean? What does quantum healing mean? What is body work? What is energy healing?
Okay. So I think again, it's all energy. The body work was my foundation for healing. So, learning anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, and then the different modalities that go along with that, hydrotherapy, and then getting more specific, like Swedish massage, deep tissue massage, neuromuscular massage, Hawaiian lomi lomi massage, Thai massage, it just goes on and on. There's
Yeah.
so many of them. And so that was my foundation for my practice. And so even just laying your hands on somebody, that's energy work. Deciding to do a massage, that's, you have their energy, you're moving energy, you're also moving the lymph and the blood, and you're getting circulation going. So there's energy in the physical sense. There's the kinesiology aspect of the energy, where the physics of the blood moving, and the gravity, and where is it going, and then there's also the energetic aspect. Blockages, maybe there's something tight in the shoulder, there's a knot, and a knot meaning there's just closer fibers of muscles that are closer together. And then when you work on that knot, there might be a memory there. Somebody might have a memory. I remember when I was training, and I was on the table, and students were working on me, and I had all these knots in my neck and my back, and as they were working on it, I would get little flashes of memories coming up. So that's why I began to wonder, oh, maybe the body holds some of these memories, and that's why we have tension. So, and then as I would work with other people, I noticed that same thing would happen, or they would talk about a specific, when you're a massage therapist, you get this a lot. I don't do massage therapy anymore unless it's with family or friends. But when I did, the term therapist. So somebody comes on the table, and then they just tell you everything that's going on. You're like, I'm not a mental health counselor. I'm just here to rub your muscles, man. But they tell you everything.
Yeah, I think that's common in a lot of practices.
Yeah.
People need to talk,
Oh
we
yeah.
need to
No,
be
I know. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. But which is fine, and so when they would talk, then I would begin to notice, like, maybe they move a little bit, and like, oh, okay, so whatever they're saying, whatever their concern is, might be held in this area. And then another area, if they're talking about relationship or finances, if they have money problems, or if they're usually talking about money problems, that they're not going to tip you very well. I'm just kidding. But okay, so I began to tune in more, and then I noticed that, so then they would tell me, okay, they feel better, or they would come back the next time and say, oh, that problem or that thing I was talking about, I don't even have that anymore. It's like, okay. And then I began to actually see, like, they didn't even have to talk. Like, if they were silent the whole time, I began to see, like, memories or images, or I could feel emotions in their body. But it was actually my body that I was feeling them in.
Yeah.
And so, and then, so sometimes it would be body related, where it would light up and I would know where to go, a certain part of the body, or it would just come up to be released. It was like, it was a memory, like in a cartoon where they had the little bubble, like it would come up and then just poof.
Yeah.
And then, so that evolved. I actually did some training with a woman, my first spiritual teacher, in the year 2000. She came to Hawaii, and she taught the first class of what she knew. First time she passed on her work, it was called, at the time, it was called, I can't remember, I think it was just called pulse technique at the time. And it was a form of quantum healing. So I learned that, and then I just kind of forgot about it and did the other training, like the Hawaiian Lomi Lomi and all the body work. And then I began to integrate that a little bit. Then it had evolved into my own thing. So where I didn't have to actually touch people, I could talk to them like I'm talking to you now, or didn't even have to talk to them. They could just say I need help, and I could just sit, without them being present right there. And whatever that was, I guess you could call it quantum. I'm not a quantum scientist, so I don't know all the terminology. I use that word more so as a place of infinite possibilities, where there's infinite possibilities, where there's infinite creation, and that infinite possibilities have to do with being able to help bring people back to balance. And I like that term better than healing. I think is just the idea of coming back into balance.
Yeah.
Um,
Healing can kind of insinuate that there's something broken or something wrong.
Yeah. Or that you'll always have to keep getting it. Like if there's one thing that's wrong, then there'll be something else, and you'll just have to keep doing healing, right?
Yeah.
So that's not the case. It's more so it's more so making people feel good and just, giving them some kind of just holding, I guess you could say holding space, but it's more than that. It's more, for me, it has been more feeling what's happening within me as I'm listening to somebody else. That's probably the biggest thing. So that listening is important, I think. Yeah.
I'm really curious because when you said that you would feel different kinds of things like tension as they were talking about finances or a relationship problem, that fascinates me. So I notice, even just in conversation, if I start talking about something that doesn't feel good, I'll feel like constriction in, my throat, or I'll feel tension in my shoulders. And when I do Reiki, I have an experience similar to yours where I'll feel, something in my body if I'm overworking on a part of someone else's, or I'll see things. And when we check in afterwards, it's what they were seeing too, or something that had happened to them. Why do you think that happens? Or do you know why that happens? I just think that's fascinating.
That is fascinating. So that's that connection that you have. Maybe it's to that source connection you have, or that soul connection, or just you making the connection to help somebody. It opens up that space, that heart space, so that you're open enough to be able to feel and to see what they're feeling and seeing. So it's the same thing. It's almost like, Chrissy, when you think about somebody and then the phone rings and it's them, it's like that same synchronicity. It's right there. I think that's the same thing that happens in sessions that you're probably giving.
Yeah.
And some of the sessions that I was giving too. So I think it's just that connection.
Yeah.
You can't explain it. I don't know how to explain the mechanics of it. Maybe it's better not to try to think about it. Just see that it's magic.
Right.
Right.
Don't overthink it. Just accept
Yeah.
it. But what is it about our bodies that holds those memories?
These are great questions. Yeah, because it makes me think. I think our bodies, I feel that our bodies, it's kind of like it has two roles. A couple, well, it's like I have to, no, that's not true. Because I know, like, if I say something and it's not true. Okay, so the bodies that we have now, I'll just start with that. Like how we are right now is based upon our personality and our conditioning. So everything that we've been told, everything, that we're told to believe, how we feel and look at about ourselves, this is the manifestation of that right now. The role of the body, I believe, is to just house more light, or what I call the living light. And that's the light of our spirit. And so, from what my mentor told me, and which I believe in my own heart, he said that the Gnostic Jesus basically was telling people that when you have between 80 and 100% of the spirit within your body, that's when you become enlightened. So I don't think enlightenment has anything to do with like a heady thing or trying to get to another dimension or another reality. It happens in the body. And that's the beauty of it. Like, it happens right here. This is the place. And so that's the enlightenment, is when we have more spirit in our body. So I think that is the role, is to kind of, figure out that that's part of the journey, at least part of my journey. Everybody, might not see that differently, but I think at some point people will begin to see that that connection to their own spirit is what makes them who they are, or how to express themselves and just feel lighter and happier and all of those good things. So the memory has a lot to do with not knowing how to process emotions. And that's the other thing I'm not I'm more adept at, I think, is working with emotions, because I've been through so much emotionally in my life. I'm sure like you have as well, right? So holding on to the emotion at the moment something happens is what the body does. It takes it in and it stores it somewhere in the biology. And even down to the molecules, it'll store it. And so what I had noticed doing, working with people, is that, basically those molecules would just start breaking up. And that's, maybe you'd have a rush of crying, or they get off the table and be like, what the hell just happened to me? Or I never hear from them again. or 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 they come back like every week. It's different for everybody, really.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's the moment something happens, not just a trigger, but it could be a traumatic thing. Car crash, someone slapping us, someone hitting us, getting bit by a dog. The moment something happens, the emotion of it are just because as kids we were told no, 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 no. Like, don't feel, don't feel, don't feel, don't feel. So by the time we're 6 years old, we don't have an emotional body. And then by the time we stop our emotional body, and then by the time we're in our teens and 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, we still have the emotional body of a 6-year-old. So the moment something happens is like the gift of feeling that we get to have. But most people don't do that. They contract, they hold it into their body, they store it somewhere, they get a disease, or that they're being told that they don't feel good about themselves. So in order to heal the past, you don't need to heal the past. You just go about your day. You don't need to worry about your traumas. Triggers are going to come up. Buttons are going to be pushed. And then you just feel that.
Yeah.
You just feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that point of view, or that explanation, because in my own journey and what I teach my clients, it's like, if we're avoiding something, or we dissociate, or we numb ourselves out with substances or other forms of addiction, it's not actually making that feeling go away. It stays somewhere in your body, in your energy field. And what I love about what you just said is that I've been really deep into the work of A Course in Miracles, that talks about the holy instant. And really, in simple terms, that's the present moment. And I also, from the Course in Miracles, understand that, and I've had this view for a long time. I used to consult Louise Hay's metaphysical causations on everything. But the course says that every illness is actually a condition of the mind.
Mm.
And you mentioned disease, so I'm curious if you could talk about that.
So I think for me, everything is a feeling, just my perspective. We're always feeling something 24/7 from the moment we're in the womb to the moment that we leave this body. There's always a feeling happening. So the disease happens when, again, I'm not aligning with any other belief system as far as like the medical industry or anything like that. So just, disclaimer.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so, so the discomfort is when we hold on to something and then our body doesn't know how to process it, so it stores it in its cell, and then the cells get sick. Um, and so this can happen in a number of ways, and it's different for everybody. Let's say something happens traumatic in your event. It doesn't have to be what's traumatic for some people can be totally easy for other people. I mean, being evicted from your apartment could be huge for some people, and other people would be like, just go to the next place, right?
Yeah.
So it's okay. So I'm just trying to go back to what you were saying. So what tends to happen is we don't want to feel what just happened, and then what outpictures or what manifests is it could be a week later, or it could be 2 weeks or a month later, or it could be a year later, something. And it doesn't have to manifest that way. It's more so the more that we're holding on to our feelings, or we're distracting ourselves from our feelings, getting on our cell phones. It could be anything, substance abuse, right? Then the more that builds up. So how to release the potential of disease happening, even let's say something just happened to me a couple of weeks ago, for example, in order to not get sick, is basically just to deal with what's going on within me right now, just my feelings as they're happening right now and not denying them. So I don't have to go to the past. I don't have to think about that traumatic event to be released. I just have to deal with what's going on right now. As far as the mind, I think the mind can be very beautiful. It could also be very sick, the thoughts that people have and what's going on in the mind. So the beauty or the purity of mind comes when you release your feelings, or you allow your feelings to be completely, until their completion in that moment without restriction. And then there's a purity of mind that comes in, whether that's an insight, whether that's knowing what to do, whether that's, you have an exam to take and all of a sudden you're just like downloaded with all this information, you ace it, so as opposed to getting sick and then blaming something for your sickness, or you know creating chemicals in the body because you're thinking all these ways, and maybe you're bipolar, and maybe you have, you're psychotic, and all these things are very real for people. Yes, they are. But from my perspective, it just goes back to because they weren't given the freedom to feel as a child, or they don't know how to process feelings as an adult. And that's where the mind can get sick. I mean, we can see that in the world, today. So we're not supposed to help the world. We're just supposed to work with ourselves.
Yeah. I want to touch on how you said we're feeling 24/7 and we don't have to go search. It's often that I start working with a client, and a lot of people do. I find that a lot of people I work with do just need to be heard. But I tell them we don't have to dig. We don't have to go back to when we were 4 or 5, because the present moment, our lives are going to present us with those triggers for those feelings to come up. And so they're meant to be felt. I'm curious your perception on that.
I think that's accurate. I'm gonna do a thumbs up because I think that's really exactly right on. Yeah, yeah, I think that's beautiful how you're working with people. It's true, really. It's gonna happen. The opportunity's always presenting itself for your body wants to survive, as much as, even if you're depressed and you're at the place of like, I don't want to be here, your body is the one that wants to survive. It's the mind that's thinking these things and making you feel these things, or the memory that doesn't want to survive. It wants to die. That part of us wants to die. Um, so so just being able to it gives people a huge relief, but it's also a truth. You're not just doing it to cover up some past trauma. It's a truth that they can deal with just their lives right now, and they can still be happy and not have to go and dig in the past and sit on a couch and um, talk about it. Do talk therapy. Um, they can just the trigger is basically that thing from the past that wants to be released. So it's like it's doing it right now, right? So I think how you're working with people is beautiful. I think that's perfect, Chrissy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It actually leads me to, so as we were planning this conversation, I have a memory of, I think it was in an email, you said that something you were working on was about, letting go of stories. And I see it very common that we're so identified with our bodies. We're so identified with our stories and our past. I'd love to hear what you have to say about letting go of our stories.
Hmm. Well, I think it goes back to the first thing, or one of the things I was saying earlier was is the thing if things something doesn't feel right anymore, you know, uh, what you're doing in your life, like you've created the story for yourself, you created this narrative, you created this life. If that doesn't feel right anymore, then letting go of that is just following that's okay. Maybe you don't need to know exactly what's going to come next, but it's okay. That's part of releasing the story. And then I think the other part of it is just being able to notice what is going, how I'm thinking in my moment to moment. Like, is that true? Is that really true? Is that right for me? And then noticing the patterns of how I've thought for so long, and just being like, it doesn't feel right anymore, and just kind of being like, obligations, that's a big one. How, like I'm a mom, I'm a dad. I have these, I've got to pay my freaking bills. Who am I? All of these, trying to like holding on to an identity that doesn't feel right. I think that's the first moment of awareness of letting go of your story, and then just kind of basically doing what feels right in the moment. So for me, for example, it's like letting go of my story. Been telling, I had a real strong urge for the last year and a half to tell my story of my NDE. And then it just basically broke down. I was like, okay, I'm done with that. That was, however that manifested, that was beautiful. But now I'm ready for something new. And I feel like that's where I am right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. And I love that you circled back to what you were saying, because you said something that really impacted me, and I resonated with it completely. When I asked you to share your journey in the beginning of this conversation, you had said that they're memories, and that they're not really they're fading or they're not really there. I can't capture the way that you said it, but the way that you said it made so much sense. It's like we can go back and remember because we're thinking about it and choosing it. But if we're not thinking about it, if we're here in this present moment, is that even there? Does it even exist? And so
Right.
thank you so much for circling us all the way back.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. I'm gonna say I don't talk a lot, so sometimes my voice, it's really weird. I'm usually pretty quiet, and I taught a class. I just finished on Sunday, and I was like, by the end, I was like, oh my gosh, I guess I got to do some more voice work, on my voice, but I love this. I love being able to talk more, and it's good for me, and I really enjoy, being able to. Anyway, I'm gonna have some water now.
I appreciate you being open and vulnerable and
Mm.
willing to talk because I think a lot of things that we've covered today are real and practical, and I believe that a lot of people will get a lot out of it. So I have a couple of questions to ask before we wrap it up, but before that, is there anything else that you want to add to the conversation that we haven't talked about so far?
Mm. I don't think so. Nothing's coming to mind.
Uh, so the first question that I have for you is how would you define God or source?
Mm. I know people ask me that. I don't know. Um, I can put it into words. What part of this letting go for me, Chrissy, really is, I feel like is really not knowing anything, is like not needing to know anything. And there's this amazing freedom and joy in that. And that not to be ignorant, that's not what I mean.
Mhm.
Or not to be aware of my surroundings or aware of what other people are going through. That's not what I mean. It's just everything that I've been told, including in the spiritual community, everything that I've heard from other people, and even my own experiences. It's like, okay, I just really don't know. Um, I think that's something had to have created all of this, and so maybe we played a part in it. We probably did play a part in it, but I can't definitively answer your question. What is God? What is source? What is the universe? Because I don't know. And I would question anybody that has an answer to that as well.
I love that. And I love asking the question. So my podcast is pretty new, but I've done quite a few interviews by now. And
Awesome.
I love asking this question because there's a parallel to everyone's answer, and that parallel is that place of not knowing. I'm not sure. So it's just so fun. So thank you for that. The
Yeah.
second question is, what would you say that the purpose of life is?
No idea. I don't know. I mean, I really don't.
Yeah,
I can micromanage those thoughts and say, helping one another, just being kinder, um, enjoying this life because it's short, those kinds of things. Is that a purpose? No, those are actions, right? Um, how do we find our purpose? I think it's letting go. For me, it's letting go of needing to ask that question. How do I find my purpose? It's going back to I don't know anything, feeling my feelings, um, without blaming or judging anybody because that made me feel that way because nobody can make me feel anyway. Um, and ultimately, maybe even I don't know. It's just I think we should all be happy. So for me personally, my journey is happiness, and that's like if I were to have a purpose or a goal, that would be it. Would be happiness. I
mine
mean,
too. to
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
reach for that better feeling thought, to reach for happy, joyous, and free. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Beautiful.
The final question is, if you could take one piece of wisdom that you have now and offer it to a younger version of yourself, what would that piece of wisdom be?
Hmm. Thinking about it, it's like going back and seeing that part of me, right?
Mhm.
That just is completely lost.
Yeah.
Like, and just imagining that they come up to me, what would I say? I'm sorry. Well, I guess I would say a couple of things. I would say don't believe what anybody says. Listen to your own wisdom. Don't even listen to me what I'm, even though I'm,
Yeah.
40 something year old Tyler talking to mini Tyler or and um um but I would just say, that your feelings are perfect. Don't, just feel them. And, there's a lot of talk about, okay, mini Tyler, like you're going to hear a lot of stuff about you're not your thoughts, you're not your feelings, you're not your body, you're not anything, but you are everything. So I just want you to acknowledge that if you're feeling something, that's perfect, and just allow yourself to feel that completely. Um, and you'll get through.
Thank you for that. When you said
Yeah.
that you were imagining that younger version of you, I started picturing the younger version of me. And what I got for her was, there's nothing wrong with you.
Nothing wrong with you. That's
Yeah,
right.
that was beautiful. How do people find you or get in touch with you or work with you?
So for now, I don't know when you're going to broadcast this podcast. So for the moment, I have a website. I plan on transferring everything to another website and doing another blog,
Okay.
just because the healing work I'm doing, I'm passing on to people like that I know that can do what I've been doing.
Yeah.
So for now, it's radicalheartworks.com. It's where they can find me. And so even if you were to post this in your description, that would be okay, because it would just forward to my new work. But it's been coming to me as like my name and my spirit. Who would have known a 3D name, Max? It's not like Araya Shariah,
Right.
whatever. It's Max. Like what? So yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of my direction, is doing more writing, more mentorship than healing at this point. And we'll just see. That's kind of where I feel like I'm headed. What about you? What kind of work do you do? I
Oh
guess
yeah.
where can people find you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They can find me here. They can find me
Okay.
everywhere. I'm on TikTok. I'm on
Oh,
Instagram. I'm
cool.
on Facebook. I do coaching one-on-one, and I do Reiki. I do Reiki healing, and I just actually started a study group for the Course in Miracles on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. And all that stuff is all over my social media
Okay.
pages. Yeah, thank you for asking.
Well, it is your
uh,
show, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it is my show, and I like to highlight other people, but I feel
Yeah.
cared for, and so thank you for asking me. So thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate everything that you're doing in the world, and most of
Mm.
all, I just appreciate you sharing and talking. I know you said that it's not something you do very often, so I feel even more honored that you would come on today and open your heart and share your wisdom. So
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a pleasure. Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
I would like to personally thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you haven't already, please be sure to like this episode, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications so that you never miss a beat. And if you really resonated with this content, please share it with all of your friends so that collectively we can expand our consciousness. Have a very blessed week.